World War II is one of the biggest and most tragic wars in human history. Cities were destroyed, millions of lives were lost, and the world would never be the same again. Even today, many of the conflicts and politics we see around the world have roots that trace back to this war. But how did it all start? Why did it happen? And how did it unfold so fast? Let's take a simple, step-by-step look at World War II. To understand World War II, we need to go back to 1919, right after World War I ended. The peace treaty that officially ended that war was called the Treaty of Versailles. At first glance, it seemed like a standard peace treaty, but it had a clause that would later cause massive problems. Article 231, also called the War Guilt Clause. This article basically said that Germany alone was responsible for the losses and damage caused by World War I. It didn't matter what other countries did, Germany had to take all the blame. And that blame came with a huge price. Germany had to pay $33 billion in reparations to the Allied countries. In today's money, that's nearly $270 billion. The payments were crushing. Germany's economy collapsed. The currency, called the German mark, lost almost all its value. In 1922, a loaf of bread cost 160 marks. By 1923, it cost 200 billion marks. People were starving, and unemployment was skyrocketing. This was the perfect moment for a new leader to rise. Enter Adolf Hitler, a young politician who was extremely good at speaking to the masses. He blamed Germany's problems on groups like Jews and socialists, saying they were the reason Germany had been humiliated on the world stage. Hitler's speeches and propaganda gradually made him very popular. Even after a failed attempt to take over the government in 1923, his influence grew. By 1929, the Great Depression hit the world, making Germany's problems even worse. Millions were unemployed, families had no homes, and children were starving. In 1933, Hitler became the dictator of Germany. With complete control, he started working on his dream, building a pure German empire, where only people of the Aryan race would live and everyone else, especially Jews, would be excluded. Hitler's propaganda spread hatred through media, speeches, and education. He promoted ideas like the Judeo-Bolshevism conspiracy, blaming Jews for revolutions and conflicts. By 1935, Germany openly violated the Treaty of Versailles by rebuilding its army and air force. Surprisingly, some countries like Britain considered the treaty too harsh on Germany, and Hitler faced little resistance at first. Meanwhile, France was worried about Germany's growing military power. They built a massive fort called the Maginot Line on their eastern border, hoping it would stop Germany if they attacked. Hitler had bigger plans. He wanted to unite all German-speaking countries under his rule. First, he targeted Austria. By infiltrating Austria's government and using propaganda, he managed to take control without a major fight. Many Austrians believed Hitler would make their country strong, so they didn't resist much. Next, Hitler focused on Czechoslovakia, especially the Sudetenland region, where around 3 million ethnic Germans lived. Using their presence as an excuse, he demanded control of the area. Britain, under Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, wanted to avoid war at all costs. So, in 1938, the Munich Agreement was signed, giving Sudetenland to Germany with the promise that Hitler wouldn't take any more land. Of course, he broke this promise within a year. By March 1939, Germany had taken over the rest of Czechoslovakia. The country was split into two parts, one directly controlled by Germany, and the other, called the Slovak Republic, became a puppet state. Hitler's aggression was clear, and the world started worrying. Poland was next. Surprisingly, Hitler signed a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. At first, it seemed strange since Hitler hated communism. But the deal allowed him to invade Poland without worrying about a Soviet attack. On September 1, 1939, nearly 1 million German troops attacked Poland using a new military strategy called Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. Tanks and aircraft moved so fast that the Polish army, still using horses and old weapons, could not defend effectively. 7,581. This invasion shocked the world. Britain and France issued an ultimatum. If Germany didn't stop, they would declare war. Hitler ignored it. On September 3, 1939, Britain officially declared war on Germany, followed by France and several other countries. But in the first months, very little fighting occurred on the Western Front. This period became known as the Phony War. Meanwhile, Poland was overwhelmed. German forces occupied Poland in less than a week. The Soviets also invaded from the east, splitting Poland in two. One key reason for Germany's rapid success was the Blitzkrieg strategy. It focused on speed and surprise. Tanks, planes, and soldiers moved together to attack quickly before the enemy could react. German soldiers were even given a drug called Pervitin, today known as crystal meth, to stay awake and fight tirelessly. After taking control of Austria and Czechoslovakia, Hitler was not stopping. His next targets were Norway, Denmark, Belgium, Netherlands, and France. By now, the world realized Hitler's ambition was massive, but no one could predict how quickly he would act. In April 1940, Hitler turned his attention to Norway and Denmark. Both countries were small, and their armies were not strong enough to resist Germany's forces. Using the Blitzkrieg strategy, German troops quickly invaded. Tanks, soldiers, and planes moved together, overwhelming the defenders in just a few days. Denmark surrendered immediately. Norway tried to resist, but was eventually taken over. Many Norwegian leaders escaped to London and formed a government in exile, hoping to return after the war. In Norway, Hitler installed a puppet pro-Nazi government to control the country. While this was happening, Britain's Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain realized he had failed to protect Europe. His plan to stop Hitler with diplomacy had not worked. On May 10, 1940, he resigned, and Winston Churchill became the new Prime Minister of Britain. Churchill was determined to fight, and his speeches would later inspire millions. The same day, Hitler launched a massive invasion of France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. This was the beginning of a full-scale Western European war. France had prepared a strong defense called the Maginot Line, a long fortified wall along the German border. They stationed troops to protect it, thinking Germany could not attack through it. But Hitler had a clever plan. The German army was divided into three groups. Group A, the most important group, would go through the Ardennes forest, a region the French thought was impossible for an army to cross. A Group B would attack the Netherlands and then move into Belgium. A Group C would attack the Maginot Line to distract French forces. Using this strategy, Germany surprised everyone. More than 40,000 military vehicles moved through the forest, reaching northern France faster than expected. The French and British armies in Belgium were shocked to see the German army attacking from behind. They were surrounded on three sides and could only escape through the sea at Dunkirk. This led to Operation Dynamo, one of the largest evacuations in history. From May 26 to June 4, 1940, nearly 350,000 Allied soldiers were rescued from the beaches of Dunkirk. British Royal Air Force planes protected the ships from German attacks, and hundreds of private boats, fishing vessels, and civilian volunteers helped evacuate soldiers. Even though the evacuation saved thousands of lives, the Allied forces had to leave almost all their weapons and equipment behind. This gave Germany a major advantage. Shortly after, on June 22, 1940, France surrendered to Germany. Meanwhile, Italy, under dictator Benito Mussolini, joined the war in alliance with Germany. This alliance was called the Pact of Steel, and together, Germany and Italy declared war on France and Britain. By mid-1940, Hitler controlled nearly all Western Europe: Austria, Poland, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and France. At this point, Hitler felt confident. Germany had a peace pact with the Soviet Union, so he didn't worry about an eastern attack. He believed Britain was the only country still opposing him. Surprisingly, America was not involved yet. After World War I, the United States had adopted a policy of staying out of European conflicts. Hitler was gaining an upper hand, and it seemed like Germany might dominate Europe. But the story was about to take a turn. After conquering France, Hitler's next plan was to invade Britain. But before sending troops, Germany had to dominate the airspace over Britain. This started the Battle of Britain, the first major campaign fought entirely in the air. The German Air Force, called the Luftwaffe, bombed British cities, airfields, and military targets. Their goal was to destroy the Royal Air Force and weaken Britain's defenses before a full invasion. The attacks were intense, and Britain suffered heavy casualties. But Britain didn't give up. The RAF used radar technology, which allowed them to detect incoming German planes early. This gave the British pilots a huge advantage. Even though Germany had more planes, British pilots were highly skilled and determined to defend their homeland. Winston Churchill's speeches inspired the British people to stay strong. He famously said, "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets, we shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender." The German Luftwaffe could not achieve complete air superiority. By October 1940, Hitler postponed the invasion of Britain. This marked the first major defeat for Germany, proving that they were not invincible. While Britain was resisting, Hitler had bigger plans in the East. His ultimate goal was to conquer the Soviet Union and expand Germany's territory. He wanted Lebensraum, which means living space, for the Aryan race. In 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. Millions of German soldiers marched east, aiming to capture key cities like Moscow, Leningrad, and Stalingrad. Initially, the German army was very successful, but the Soviet resistance was much stronger than expected. The harsh Russian winter and long supply lines created major problems for Germany. The Soviets used scorched earth tactics, destroying their own cities and resources to prevent them from falling into German hands. This slowed down Germany's advance and caused huge losses. At the same time, the war spread to North Africa. Italy had colonies in Libya and Egypt, and Germany sent troops to support Italy. The goal was to control the Mediterranean region and the Suez Canal, a crucial route for trade and resources. In North Africa, the famous German general Erwin Rommel, known as the Desert Fox, led German and Italian forces. Rommel's tactics were clever and fast, and for a while, the Axis forces gained the upper hand. However, the British army fought back fiercely, leading to a long and challenging campaign that would last until 1943. By 1941, Hitler's Germany had conquered much of Europe. Austria, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Denmark, Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, and France were all under German control. Italy, Japan, and Germany formed the Axis powers, while Britain and its allies, later joined by the USA and the Soviet Union, were known as the Allies. Germany seemed unstoppable, but the war was about to reach a turning point. In June 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. Millions of German soldiers advanced towards cities like Moscow, Leningrad, and Stalingrad. Initially, the German army achieved great success, moving quickly and capturing territory. But the Soviet Union fought back fiercely. The Soviets used a scorched earth strategy, destroying crops, bridges, and buildings to slow the German advance. Supplies became scarce for the Germans, and harsh Russian winter made fighting extremely difficult. German soldiers were not prepared for temperatures below -30 degrees Celsius. The Battle of Moscow marked one of the first major setbacks for Hitler. The Soviet Red Army counterattacked, pushing German forces back. The war on the Eastern Front became a long, brutal fight that drained German resources and troops. Before 1941, the USA had stayed out of the conflict, focusing on its own economy. But everything changed on December 7, 1941, when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, the American naval base in Hawaii. This attack shocked the world. Thousands of American soldiers were killed and battleships were destroyed. The USA immediately declared war on Japan. Soon after, Germany and Italy declared war on the USA in support of Japan. Now, the war truly became global. With America's entry, the Allies gained enormous strength in troops, weapons, and resources. Factories in the USA produced ships, tanks, planes, and guns at an unprecedented speed. The balance of power began to shift. Several battles marked major turning points in World War II. Hitler aimed to capture Stalingrad, a key industrial city in the Soviet Union. The battle was fierce, with both sides suffering heavy losses. The Soviets surrounded the German army, cutting off supplies. By February 1943, Germany surrendered at Stalingrad. This was the first major defeat of the German army and marked a turning point on the Eastern Front. In the Pacific, the United States fought Japan in the Battle of Midway. Using clever intelligence, the U.S. Navy ambushed the Japanese fleet, sinking 4 aircraft carriers. This victory shifted control of the Pacific to the Allies and stopped Japan's expansion. In North Africa, General Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, initially gained control over Libya and Egypt. But the British Army, supported by American troops, fought back. By May 1943, Axis forces were defeated in North Africa, giving the Allies control over the Mediterranean. On June 6, 1944, the Allies launched Operation Overlord, better known as D-Day. It was the largest amphibious invasion in history. Allied troops landed on the beaches of Normandy, France, fighting against heavily fortified German positions. The invasion was risky, but the Allies succeeded. Within weeks, they secured a foothold in France and began pushing German forces back. Paris was liberated in August 1944, and the Allies continued moving east toward Germany. By 1945, Germany was surrounded. Soviet forces were attacking from the east, while American, British, and French troops advanced from the west. German cities were bombed relentlessly, and the army was running out of supplies and soldiers. Hitler, refusing to surrender, stayed in his Berlin bunker. On April 30, 1945, realizing the war was lost, Hitler committed suicide. Germany surrendered shortly after, on May 8, 1945, marking the end of the war in Europe. This day is celebrated as V-Day, Victory in Europe Day. Even after Germany's defeat, the war continued in the Pacific. The USA fought Japan in islands across the Pacific Ocean. Battles were intense, and casualties were high. In August 1945, the United States dropped atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. This forced Japan to surrender, officially ending World War II on September 2, 1945. World War II was the deadliest conflict in human history, killing over 70 million people. Cities were destroyed, economies collapsed, and millions of people became refugees. The war also led to major political changes. The United Nations was formed to prevent future conflicts. Germany and Japan were occupied and rebuilt with new governments. The Cold War began between the USA and the Soviet Union. World War II reshaped the global order, influencing politics, economics, and culture for decades. It showed the dangers of extreme nationalism, dictatorship, and propaganda. Never underestimate propaganda. Hitler used it to manipulate millions. Alliances matter. The collaboration between the Allies helped defeat Axis powers. Technology and strategy are key. Radar, Blitzkrieg, and intelligence played crucial roles. The human cost of war is enormous. Millions of lives were lost, and societies were forever changed. Even today, the consequences of World War II are visible in international relations, borders, and political alliances. Understanding this war is essential to learning how the modern world came to be.